Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 220 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Really pleased that you're with us today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to find out about what's going on in the bar exam. We come to you every week on Wednesdays with all things bar exam related, and we're really glad you're here. If this is your first time on the podcast, welcome. Glad you found us. Hope you enjoy the episodes and the show. If you are a regular listener or watcher, we appreciate that very much. Thanks so much, and invite you all to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any information. In today's episode, we're going to be doing an interview with a recent successful Florida bar taker, Claire Walls, and it's a wonderful interview. Claire is a very successful attorney, barred in 3 other states, running her own private practice in West Virginia while she studied for the Florida bar exam. She went through the exam one time, came very close to passing, but didn't make it, came back with all of the pressures of doing it a second time, discovered the technique of mind mapping. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and was successful. And it's a great story, so I hope you'll stick around for that. Now, if you'd like to watch the interview with Claire or any of our podcast episodes, you can do that by simply going to celebrationbarreview.com/220 for today's episode, but just put in the episode number. So today's episode is 220. If you prefer to listen to the podcasts, you can do that by subscribing on Apple iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio, or really a lot of places where podcasts are syndicated. You should find us in most of those locations. And you'll find the show notes, whether you're on video or audio, attached to each of these episodes. We also have an archive of all of our podcast episodes on our website. Just go to our website and you will see the link for podcasts. Click on that, and all of the episodes back for more than 3 years now are there along with the show notes. So check that out as well. Now, in terms of what's going on in the bar exam world right now, before we jump into today's interview, we held off on doing this part of our podcast until the very last moment because I kind of had a spidey sense that the New York bar results might be out this week. As I'm recording today, they have not yet come out. I'm still guessing that we will see those results before the 19th of October, but we'll see what happens. In any event, we did get some results out in a couple of states last week. Most notably were New Jersey and Massachusetts. The results tended to be pretty much what we've seen so far to date everywhere else. Relatively low, in fact, in some cases, very low pass rates. The New Jersey pass rate is 58%. Again, when you're just barely clearing the 50% pass rate in July, that is really bad news. I can remember when the New Jersey bar exam had a pass rate in the high 80%. So very, very disappointing results there. In Massachusetts, which just switched to the UBE, there was a 69% overall pass rate from the July exam, so a little better than New Jersey to be sure. But one of the things that was interesting is Massachusetts did provide statistics on repeat bar takers, and the repeat bar takers had a 20% repeat or 20% pass rate. So a huge disparity between first time and repeat bar takers. That 20% repeat rate clearly indicates how difficult it is to pass the exam once you failed, and why it's so important to do something different. And that's a great segue into our free training that we're offering this Thursday, October 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll be doing a live training called Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. And I really encourage you all, if you haven't been through this training, to join me. We're going to take a look at the 4 steps that successful bar takers have to follow in order to pass the bar exam. Now, this training is completely free, but you do need to register, and you can do that in one of several ways. You can go to the show notes here on the video page or the audio podcast and click on the link there and register. Or you can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com. You'll see the registration link at the top of the page. Or if you just want to go to the registration page itself, go to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar. When you get there, sign up for Thursday night's webinar, 7 p.m. Eastern. If that date or time do not work for you, we also offer the same content in a on-demand video version, and you'll see the button there as well. Just go ahead and click on that, and you can schedule your own showing of the material. Now, obviously, the difference is I'm not there live, and we're not doing a Q&A live in the on-demand version, but everything else is the same. And if you're in the on-demand version, you can certainly email me from the webinar, and I'll respond to you personally. But I do hope you'll join us on Thursday. I think it's really useful to get the live experience and to be able to participate at the end. I do a Q&A, and that's always really interesting as to the things that people want to know about. But ultimately, what we really want you to understand is that if you're going to pass the bar in any jurisdiction, whether it's Massachusetts or New Jersey or New York or Florida or California or any of them, if you've taken the exam and not been successful, you have to do things differently. And we want to show you what those things are and help give you a roadmap to make that successful. So I hope you'll join us Thursday the 18th, 7 p.m. Eastern, that's 4 p.m. Pacific time, how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. We're going to talk about the importance of doing something different. So somebody that did something different was our interview topic and subject today, Claire. Claire, as you'll hear, is a very successful attorney, and she really is a hardworking person with a lot on her plate. And when she made the decision for personal reasons to relocate to Florida, she had to sit for the Florida bar exam. And like a lot of licensed attorneys, that's a very difficult thing to do. And she went through the sort of typical approach of trying and coming really close but not making it, and then being faced with, what do I do differently? And you're going to find out that what she did was to incorporate Photoreading and mind mapping, and that made all the difference for her. And I think it's a great interview. So I want to go ahead and jump into our discussion with Claire. We recorded it just recently, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers, and we have a real treat today. One of my favorite students that I've had to work with, or gotten to work with in the last couple of years, Claire Walls, is with us. And Claire, you're now a successful Florida bar taker, or passer, right?
I am.
How does that feel?
Mostly relief.
That's a fair answer, isn't it? This has been quite a climb for you, and not an easy journey necessarily. Sometimes people think everybody just wakes up one day and they decide to take the bar and then they pass, and end of story. But for you, it's been a bit more complicated, hasn't it?
Sure. I was not successful in my first attempt, so I had to gear up and do it again.
Yeah, and that's challenging. Well, why don't we back up just a little bit, and why don't you tell people a little bit about your background, what led you to, you're already a successful licensed attorney in West Virginia, correct?
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about what caused you to give that up or want to add Florida to your resume.
Okay. I first became licensed in West Virginia, and at this point I'm also licensed in Pennsylvania and Ohio. I have a practice that's centered in those states. My daughter moved to South Florida a few years ago, and I'm stalking my daughter.
Okay, well, honesty counts here. All right.
So I decided that I wanted to at least have a part-time residence in Florida, and I got the idea that it would be best and prudent to be licensed to practice law in Florida, since I might want to eventually live in Florida full time. So I just thought it was a good idea to have my license in that jurisdiction. So
yeah, but you're running a very active law practice, though, correct?
It's pretty busy, yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
And so you made the decision to sit for the Florida exam, and you spent some of your time in Florida and some of your time, I think, in West Virginia, right?
Yeah.
I know we had some conferences while you were in West Virginia. And
Yeah.
what was that like? One of the questions I get from people is, what is it like to balance a law practice with studying for the bar? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's difficult, for sure. I think for me, because I have my own practice and I'm in charge of it, it was a little easier for me to sort of delegate things for a period of time, at least the first time I took it, because I planned for that for several months. And so I was able to block out a little more time so that I could have wider, just, more time during the day, like 2 or 3 hours at a time, which you don't normally get in a law practice. And I didn't want it to always be, 8:30 in the evening, because I knew I wouldn't really be worth much for studying at that point. So I know myself, it was important to me that I was able to study during sort of work hours, because that's when I'm the most awake and alert and not tired. So it's doable. The second time I took it, I did not have as much of an ability to block out time the way I did the first time because of course, I wasn't expecting to fail. So I didn't really think that far ahead. The second time was a little tougher. I just had to squeeze it in when I could, and I had to travel a lot. So I was doing a lot of listening to lectures and reading outlines on planes.
Yeah.
Sitting in offices wherever I could. It was kind of when I was in law school, I had a child, and I remember at that time I sort of took my books with me everywhere, and it was kind of like this for me the second time. I took my materials with me, books, whatever, but I just made sure I had that with me at all times so that if I had a free half hour or even 15 minutes to review something, I could do it. So that was kind of the second time around. It was really just sort of squeezing it in where I could, and if I ended up having a slow day, then I would just really take advantage of that time.
So on this first time through, you were in our personal coaching program, so you and I were talking about your work, and you were very diligent about doing the work, but it was a big challenge for you to get back into the mode of study and taking the bar. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it was. It was kind of like starting from scratch. It had been many, many years since I went to law school and took a bar exam. And my practice is very, very focused in just a few areas. And so learning civil procedure and evidence and these things, it was completely new to me almost. They were just sort of vague concepts and vocabulary words in my mind at that point. And I really didn't have much of a current understanding of it. So I really did have to start from scratch.
Yeah. And the writing was different too, the writing approach that we were teaching you.
Yes. The writing style was great. I hadn't done IRAC in all those years, so it wasn't like I was trying to unlearn that. Yeah. But the FLA style that you teach, I found to be very useful in managing the material. It gives you an outline before you sit down to write. If you're not sure what to write, you can kind of go with the outline and come up with something. And I found that to be super helpful because I think most people have trouble, when you're sitting down at a test under time conditions, sometimes it's hard to come up with the things that you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you had 2 hours to write it, you'd be great. But sometimes when you've got that time pressure, it's just really hard to pull that out. So the FLA helps with that, I think, a lot.
I've had bar takers, particularly adults who are licensed elsewhere, say that the Florida bar is a little intimidating. You walk in and you've got so many people, so many young people in particular. It feels a little weird, doesn't it, as an adult?
All kinds of people. I was surprised at the diversity of people taking the Florida bar exam. Young people, it is mostly young, recent grads, but lots of older people were there. I was really surprised at that. It's not a fun atmosphere at all. Not that you would expect it to be fun, but it's uncomfortable. And the biggest thing for me that I think is helpful to people to know is the whole eating is hard, and you got to sort of figure that out ahead of time. Yeah. And the second time around, I actually made sure I had a room with a refrigerator, and I went to the grocery store and I had all my meals in the fridge, so I didn't have to worry. I was walking distance, so I went back to my room and I had my little salad or whatever it was I packed, and I was able to eat my breakfast in my room, so I didn't have to be stressed about getting into a restaurant and having to wait and waiting for my check and that causing anxiety. I just didn't want to deal with any of that the second time, so it was
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it really helped me get control of the atmosphere as much as possible. Yeah. They only give you, I think, an hour for lunch, and it's just, it's not really enough time. And by the end of 3 hours, you're hungry. Hangry.
Yeah, you're hangry. That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you went to take the bar the first time. You had been prepping, working hard. It was, I use the analogy sometimes, we're climbing a mountain and we start, base camp is in the valley and we come up the mountain, and you were making pretty good progress. And I think we both felt pretty optimistic that you were going to get through the exam the first time. But you didn't. You didn't miss by a lot, did you?
No, I didn't.
No.
But I missed.
But let's talk a little bit about what that's like, because I think it's important, and I appreciate so much that you're willing to share your story. But it is very discouraging when that result comes out, even for somebody with a practice in 3 states who's been successful. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like emotionally for you?
Sure. It is discouraging. after I took the test, I wasn't confident that I had passed, but I thought there was a chance. So actually, my perception was pretty close because I was close to passing, and in my mind, I wasn't sure. So I was right in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is discouraging, but the helpful thing about Florida is when you fail, they send you a breakdown of your performance in all the different areas, how you did on each essay, how you did in each subject area, and that was super helpful to me because I had a real seesaw. I did really well in some areas and very poorly in just a couple. And that was enough to sink me, just those couple areas. For whatever reason, and who knows, I didn't do well in a couple of areas. And
so we pointed out some of those areas, and you were also using photo reading, correct?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when you went back, now you're ready, you made a decision that you were going to resit the exam. Was that a hard decision to make, or were you pretty committed to doing that?
I knew I was going to do it, but I didn't start studying for 2 weeks because I was just kind of like, just mostly annoyed that I hadn't passed. And I just didn't really, I've got to gear up and do this whole thing again. And I knew I would do it, but it just took me a minute to sort of get the motivation to do it.
Yeah.
But, thankfully and luckily, the subject that I did the very worst on was, and I followed the syllabus the second time, it was the very first subject. So, of course, you want to hit that thing that you screwed up on. And so that was one of the subjects was the first one. So that made me feel better to be able to get right on that again and figure out what.
And with the photo reading, were you mind mapping also?
The mind mapping was really important to me. I did a lot of mind mapping. The first time I took the test in my studies, I didn't really get the memo about mind mapping until about halfway through. And I started doing it, but the second time I really spent a lot of time mind mapping. So some of those earlier subjects I hadn't really mind mapped. So I did at this time. The subjects I did poorly on, I spent a lot of time mind mapping. The mind mapping is great. I know a lot of people think it's time consuming, and it kind of is, but even when you don't have a lot of time, and I did this frequently, the way the procedures that you start with a larger subject and you go, you nest. But even if you only have 15 minutes, and I would do this, I would just get a subject that I felt confused about, like, third-party beneficiary contracts, and just do a mind map about that. Even if I only had a few minutes, it was something that was always hazy, so just do it. Once you do it, it's kind of like you've got it. Once you draw it out and do the mind map, I feel like it really does help your mind to activate the information in a way that reading just doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that's important for people that aren't fully understanding what we're talking about here. The concept is that instead of taking a linear set of notes, you actually draw out sort of like a spoke and hub or tree with branches, and you're putting out that information, and then you're adding to the mind map as you work, so it's dynamic, and you're getting a visual representation of the material, right? And then you take the big subject and you nest down as you keep drilling down further. So I think it's a great idea. You take a particular subtopic and you say, I'm not entirely clear on that. You start a new mind map just for that subject, right? And then it's there. Right. Did you read your mind maps out loud to yourself at all?
I did somewhat. You had suggested that I do that. Yeah. I didn't read all of them out loud, but I did that. Yeah. And it reminded me, there were, in law school when we were taking, like the appellate ad class and trial ad, and they would say, practice in the mirror. And I hadn't done that since then, but it was kind of like that idea that once you're sort of speaking it out loud, you kind of become more comfortable with it. And again, it's just another way to get that material in your mind and, understand it and be comfortable with it.
So in preparing for the second time around, now you're starting to go back to our mountain climbing analogy, you're starting now not in the valley, but your base camp's up a lot higher. So now you're focused on... In theory. And you're focused on particularly an emphasis on areas where you had been weaker on the first test. Yeah. But it's harder emotionally and it's tougher logistically because now it's like, oh my God, now I've been studying for a year instead of 6 months, right? And you used our retake, and so now you're in the basic course and you're just taking the skills that you've been taught and you're employing those. Yeah. What's it like going back to the exam the second time? How is it different? You talked about food. I think that's a great tip. Anything else that was different for you in going back a second time?
just the familiarity with the place and what the whole scene is and what that's
Yeah.
going to be like. And, you know, I wasn't nearly as nervous the second time. And I think that was a big issue for me the first time. I had a ton of anxiety and, you know, I was hungry. I couldn't figure out the whole eating thing,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
seems really silly to have sort of, you know, not made sure I had that. But it's weird there. And you don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of people. And, yeah, it was better. It's very annoying, that whole situation there. They make you wait in line
Right.
for probably 20 minutes, and then you get into your seat, and it's another like 45 minutes before the test begins, and you're just kind of sitting there rotting away, waiting for the test to
Yeah.
start.
Yeah. It is a mind. Yeah. They do some weird things to your head. No
Yeah,
doubt.
it's
And,
tough.
and
Yeah.
so this exam in July was a particularly tough exam. There were some interesting things. There was professionalism for the first time ever, and there was dependency, and there was federal constitutional law as the essays. What was your reaction after the morning on Tuesday? Because those were kind of strange essays.
Honestly, I knew to be prepared for anything. You know,
Okay.
that dependency, you know, they tested it the year before, and so sort of the prevailing wisdom would be they're not going to test it again. But I thought, no. And I actually had done the sample dependency essay like a week before that test.
Good.
So I saw that and I was like, okay, I feel okay about this one. I'm prepared. Yeah, I mean, who knows you just don't know. They can test anything, anytime. It's probably not going to be something you expect. And so I think the idea and what you have always said, you just sort of, I mean, you can't know everything, obviously. Nobody can, and it's not possible, but you just have to touch everything as much as you can and try to just
Right.
be prepared for them to
Right.
have like 3 essays on one subject, or who knows.
Anything's possible. That's right.
Anything's
And then,
possible.
yeah, and then Florida multiple choice in the afternoon, which is horrific.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And you used the intuitive method of answering multiple choice questions, right? You didn't linger over the questions as you were answering them.
Right. Speed was never my problem with multiple choice. I was always pretty good at getting through those quickly, so I never had a time issue. But yeah, that definitely helps. You know, I don't know exactly how I did. I passed the test. That's all that matters.
All that
But
matters.
I don't know which ones I did better on or worse this time. So
It's
you
okay.
know.
Passing is passing.
Yeah,
Um,
but the Florida questions, they are strange and quirky. But again, you know, you prepare us for that, the
Right.
fact that they're odd, and we have a lot of sample questions, and, you know, it is what it is. You deal with it.
Right. And when the exam was, and then of course multi-state on Wednesday, and you've been through multi-state, so you knew pretty much what to expect there.
Right.
When the exam was over, what was your reaction this time as compared to the first time?
I felt like I did better. I felt like I did a little better, and I only needed to do a little better, and I did do a little better, and I passed.
That's all it takes, man. You know, it's
I
anything
did not
over.
do like vastly better. I did
Yeah.
enough better to pass. So.
Right, and that's the point. And I think sometimes people get locked into this idea that you got to have 30, 40, 50-point increases, but you don't. Sometimes what you need is 3 or 4 points. And
Right.
finding those 3 or 4 points is all the difference in the world. So
Right.
tell me a little bit about what it was like when results came out. Where were you? What were you doing? What happened?
So I was, working. I knew it was around 9 o'clock, and so I went on the website and I looked, and I was like, So check again, and all day long I kind of kept it there, and I would keep looking back at it, and finally I put it in my Adobe software and highlighted my number. Because I kept thinking, like, surely I've looked at the wrong number. Surely this is a mistake. You know, I texted my daughter and my fiance and told them what had happened, and my employees, you know, because I'm sure they were afraid. They were probably like, let's not say anything. She might fail again.
Yeah, got that.
So,
And-
yeah, it was definitely a relief, and just kind of really did take, you know, I still feel like I can't believe I finally passed it, but, you know, I did, so.
That's awesome. And did your daughter say, okay, Mom, so now you're really stalking me?
No, not at all. No.
She's excited to have you come down. Right?
Yeah, no, because we went to dinner a few nights before, and we had this conversation and I said, I don't know if I'm going to do it again. I just don't know how much time I can spend in this bar exam moment, but maybe I'll pass.
There you go.
Yeah, you might, but she was kind of like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and the statistics are, so unfavorable for repeat bar takers that it's huge. I mean, it's about a 30% pass rate. So it's a big accomplishment. And so congratulations on so many different levels. So now you've got you're past the Florida bar. You're barred in 3 other states. You going to take any more bar exams, or are you?
No, I don't think so. But I do have that updated MPRE score, so I can waive into states with that. Because a lot of states, because I'm licensed in 3 other states that actually let you waive into other states. So I've been thinking about that. But then you have to go through the whole character and fitness and prevail upon everyone you've ever known to fill out a form and send it in.
Fun, huh? Yeah, fun times.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Good. Shell out a bunch of money. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, you have any suggestions or comments or recommendations for people who might be just starting this process now based on your own experience?
So if you're a Celebration Bar student, just definitely follow the syllabus. I think that is really helpful. And, I didn't do much with the group coaching, but I did always listen to the Friday afternoon. I didn't always listen to them live. There's a Friday afternoon seminar, and it's offered, you can go back and listen to it later. And that was very helpful to me for many reasons. Many important questions were answered that people had, and they were things, I may not have thought of, but were important things I needed to know. And also just encouragement. Knowing that you're going through this with other people, and it is a huge struggle for every single person who's dealing with it, and it's unpleasant and it's not fun, and it's always good to know that you're not the only one dealing with that. And so I think those group the calls, and I'm sure the group coaching too, and I know a lot of people get a lot out of that, and I think it's kind of the same idea though, just more of a one-on-one thing, or with a group. So I think taking advantage of those things is something that people should definitely try to do, because I think it's encouraging, and it kind of keeps your eye on the ball. And I always feel like group energy pushes everyone forward. So
now, you chose the personal coaching program. Was that helpful to you? I mean, no pressure,
helpful.
But
Very helpful. Well, so the big advantage is learning the writing style and having the conferences with you, and really honing that, because it's a little different, and so it's. And like I said, just being able to parse through a very long fact pattern and breaking that out into what it is you need to write about, and not going off on some irrelevant tangent like I would do sometimes. Just having somebody read that and say, like, okay, no, that's not really where you need to be going. You need to be here. And just, having that guidance was helpful.
Well, you were a delight to work with, and a great student. You took all of our comments and suggestions and employed them, and I thought that it was particularly notable that, in spite of the disappointment and discouragement of not passing, that you did pick yourself back up and went back at it and really worked on the weak areas and improved them. And I have to say, I was not surprised that you passed. So but I know it doesn't. It's still tough no matter what, and no matter where you are and what the circumstance is. So I really encourage people, if you're feeling like, oh my God, am I ever going to get through this? Your story is a great one to sort of remind them that it can be done, even when you got a lot of other things on your plate.
Yeah, so. It definitely can, and it isn't fun, and it isn't easy, but one day at a time, just keep going.
That's it. Well, I really appreciate the fact that you came out to share your story. I know it will help a lot of other people. I wish you the very best. I hope that you enjoy coming to Florida, being with your fiance and your daughter, and enjoying the warm weather here, and just being part of our community. I know you've stayed in our Facebook group and offered your help and support to existing students, so we very, very much appreciate that. It's one of the nice things about our course is that our alums stick around and they help out. So that's a great thing.
And I'm happy to help, and I've said that to people, if anybody feels like, if there's anything I could do to help, I'm not sure what it would be, but if there is, I'm happy to help. So.
Well, that's great. Well, Claire, thank you again, and congratulations. We're so proud of you and pleased for you. And for all of you out there in our audience, thanks for being with us today. And with that, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Well, Claire is really something, isn't she? And it's a great story and a great interview, and we thank her so much for being willing to share that with all of you. Now, I just want to remind all of you before we wrap up today that we've got our free training, Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam, coming up this Thursday. That's October 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern. To register, just go to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar, and you can sign up for that or for the on-demand version if that fits your schedule better. We're still holding on, waiting for results from New York and Texas. We expect those any day now. We'll let you know on the podcast as soon as those results come out. If you're waiting for your results, we hope that they're favorable. If you got your results and they were not what you had hoped for, I do hope you'll contact us, reach out to us, join us on Thursday night for the webinar and the free training. I think it could make a huge difference for you because we see over and over again with people like Claire that it's possible to be successful on the exams, even the toughest exams. You just have to be able to do something different to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. So we'll see you all next week along the Extra Mile and on the Pass List. Thanks, everybody, for being with us tonight.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.